I want to welcome you to For Life and Liberty this afternoon. I'm Sue Parker, and I'm here with Karen McNeil. Hi, Karen.
Hey, Sue.
How are you?
I'm exhausted. How are you?
Karen has been preparing for a social event at her home this weekend.
Oh, and I've got Bill. He's working in the yard today.
I told her I think we need to plan one of these about once a month to get all the things done.
You know,
absolutely,
the painting done and the yard fixed and all that kind of thing. Yes, he's home working.
Well, we are very blessed today because we have a gentleman sitting in with us today that is a favorite of many people in the Memphis and Mid-South area. Shelby County Mayor Mark Luttrell. Welcome to the program.
Well, Karen and Sue. I get to say both of them.
That's right.
But Karen and Sue, thank you. I've had an opportunity to spend some time with you before. I love it. I love Bott Radio. I love to just turn my dial to 640 and just get a blessing. And it's a blessing to be with you today. Thank you.
You know, I think the first time I ever met you personally was here. There was an event or something. It was a celebration of something. And I was telling my husband the other day, I said, you know, I never thought I would really get to meet the mayor, know the mayor. He knows my name. He said it takes so little to please you.
Well, Sue, I would say that I love Charlie. You know, he as you're aware, he and a group of men will come down about once every 3 months, and we'll have a little prayer meeting there in the office. And how much that means to me to know that prayer warriors care enough to lift me up that way, and I appreciate it so much.
Well, I'll tell you, the first time I met you, actually, I met your wife before I met you. You were running for sheriff the very first time. How long ago has that been?
Eons.
A long time ago.
2002.
And because that you were in the middle of an election, we couldn't have you on the air. So to get around that so that our listeners would get to know you better, we had Pat on.
Right.
And
right.
I fell in love with Pat Luttrell right then. She was a great interview and a great lady. And she has been a friend to our ministry for many, many years, and we appreciate that so much, Mayor Luttrell.
You know, you hear so often that you're only as good as the person that you marry. And sometimes people just throw that out there as a cliche, but I'm here to tell you that it's true.
Well,
it is true. My success in large part is due to the support that I have at home with my wife, and I appreciate your comments,
wonderful
Karen.
lady.
Well, it does show through, and we're excited about your being with us today. I'll have to tell y'all that typically this is our program. We call It's All Local. And Heidi Schaefer and Chris Thomas have been with us on these occasions before. Chris is away, and Heidi was going to be with us today, and she is somewhere in traffic, I'm sure. And so we're just going to open the door. When she comes, she can jump in with us, but we're going to go ahead. We've got some things to talk about today that we know about, and then we told the mayor we could talk about anything he wanted to talk about. So we don't know what will come in the second part. I'm kind of scared, but we'll try to stay in there. But I think on the top of the list, Mayor, is the school situation. I'm just going to turn you loose on that. What would you like for us to know?
Well, if I could, Sue, let me give a little background to this and a little history. First of all, I don't really agree with how we got where we are. I think it was handled in not a very well organized way. But the reality of it is that the city of Memphis had the option of surrendering their charter. They exercise that option, and education is primarily a county government responsibility, or county-wide responsibility. So if they're within a county, if there is a special school district and they want to give up their charter, then they have every right to do it.
Is that just here, or is it in Tennessee?
No, that's
statewide.
Statewide,
that's
okay. And usually you'll find that it's pretty common nationwide, that particular process. So they exercised their option, which defaulted to the county, which meant the county had to assume that responsibility. And since then, there have been so many missteps in the process of moving toward unification of the schools. You see now several of the municipalities that are exercising their option to establish a school within their own municipalities. And I support them if that's the direction they want to go. Now, there have been some legal stumbles or impediments along that way. But I would fully expect that we're going to see municipal schools. And I take the approach toward public education that in the 21st century, we've got to start looking for innovative ways to educate our children. Some of the traditional ways that we have followed historically have not always proven to be successful. And I think that probably locally we're an example of that. We know that we are graduating some people that really don't have the required skills to either further their education or go into the workplace. So we're in a time where we're really addressing a paradigm shift in education. And that, in that sense, I think this is probably healthy. I think what we're ultimately going to see is a variety of different ways to educate our children. I think we're going to see public schools. I think we're going to see private schools. We're going to see homeschooling, which a tremendous amount of emphasis is being placed on homeschools. And it seems like each day I'm running into more and more people that are getting engaged in homeschooling. Charter schools, the achievement schools, are schools that are at the low end of the ladder in achievement in our community, and there's special programs that are being really put into those schools. So we're going to see, I think, ultimately a combination of public schools, private schools, charter schools, achievement schools, municipal schools, home schools, and virtual schools. And what we as political leaders in that process have to do is really embrace them all and find out what works best for the children and the parents of those children.
You know, Mayor, I love the way this sounds because my family is an example of that. My oldest daughter graduated from Germantown High School. My middle daughter graduated from homeschool. And my youngest daughter graduated from ECS.
Wow.
and it was a great thing because we could look at the needs of each of our daughters and find how they flourished the best. And it was great. Now, back then, I was really afraid of homeschool, and she is the one that asked. She had mononucleosis in her sophomore year, and so we homeschooled, during that time while she recovered. And when that school year was over, she said, "Mom, I would really like to continue this." And I was like,
wow.
That's unheard of. No, I can't even imagine doing that. But we investigated it, and she went on and got her degree. And she was fine. So I like the idea of all these different choices that we can have.
Well, and I think that's a good example of what I was talking about, because children, depending upon their status in life, their station in life,
lots of different things.
Yeah, one system might not serve everyone's needs.
Right.
And if we're going to do some things radical to kind of turn this around so that we are graduating from high school competent teenagers, then we've got to start looking at our methods for achieving that objective. And so I'm very open to all of those particular procedures.
Wonderful.
I congratulate you for making that investment. I've often thought that you talk about a labor of love. That is truly the definition of a labor of love, is someone that takes their free time and devotes it to educating their children rather than passing it off to someone else to do. But that said, I'm confident that we're going to make progress with education. We're not quite there yet. We're going through a transition. I think this transition is going to take us a few years to get the financial piece worked out, to get people adjusted to the concept of just what we're talking about, of let's think in an innovative way of how we can do what's best for our children.
Now, are there some things going on in Nashville to move this forward? I think I heard that there may be some legislation that could kind of help the municipalities.
Yes, there have been several bills introduced in the General Assembly this spring. Many of them are really not worth the paper they're written on, but some of them are very good. Certainly charter schools, the ban's been lifted to allow more charter schools. There's a ban that's been lifted on more municipal schools. I think you're going to see more charter schools, more municipal schools. The governor, I thought, had a good program for school vouchers that failed for political reasons. So that fell by the wayside, but certainly, hopefully, that'll come back. Certainly, we're putting more emphasis on pre-kindergarten programs in those very formative years, those first formative years of school. And then we're also trying to invest more in secondary education. So when I speak of education, I speak of the continuum, and it's really from cradle to career. What can we do with programs like our Books from Birth program, where we're putting books in the hands of parents so they can start reading to children immediately, to pre-K programs, expanding the range of pre-kindergarten programs, getting that child ready for the first grade so that the child can start constructively building that academic foundation, and then moving them through the socialization of schools. How can we, in the process of matriculating through 12, 13 years of school, how can we socialize in a way that's socially acceptable? We know from some of our discussions here that we've got some problems within our schools. Violence, teenage pregnancies, all of those are issues that we need to address from a socialization standpoint as well, so that we can move these children into teen years, into young adult years, and then ultimately into partnering with a life partner that they can then start building their own family. Right. I very strongly believe that education is the foundation for all things good. And if we're going to really impact such things as poverty, children out of wedlock, teenage pregnancies, infant mortality, it starts with a good education system. So if we can build a good, solid education system, think of the ramifications that can have throughout society with every issue that we face, from unemployment to healthy life choices to any number of things.
Well, oftentimes we see, too, people don't recognize the basic problem. You know, the things that get the news can be the things that we focus on. And again, valuing life, valuing property, respecting each other, these are things that are so important for us to live in a healthy community. You know, if you don't like what's going on in your community, you need to look and see what are the children doing, because they are truly the next generation. And to have diversity in education, I think, is the best possible plan. We have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, and the daughters were so different from our son. And yet the education system that they engaged in sort of treated everyone the same. So some did good and some didn't do well. And it's played out throughout life in some of the choices that, that they've been left to make. So I think, if we look as families, are guardians of our children, and we know them better than anybody. And maybe we can determine this would be good for this one, like Karen's experience with her girls. So, I think that's a good plan. And I think for those of us who don't have children in the system to be engaged in it, we've got to have open communication about it.
There's nothing more responsible. Well, let me rephrase it. I think on the day of judgment, we adults are going to be held accountable for what we did for our children.
Exactly.
And failing in that area, I'm far be it from me to judge a person's entrance into heaven, but I do think that there's no greater responsibility, God-given responsibility that we have than to raise our children correctly and to get involved in our children's lives, to help them make those constructive decisions and to build that foundation within them. Parents get involved in children. I've been involved in the criminal justice system most of my adult life in working in various correctional facilities. One of the saddest things that you see in prison is when you see a father and son or a mother and a daughter both serving time in prison, in the same prison at the same time.
Yes.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
And when I see situations like that, I think, okay, there's a very, very dramatic breakdown of the purpose of family there. And what you were just talking about, Sue, the importance of parental engagement and parental involvement, I think just highlights what a great responsibility we have.
That's right.
And the fact that we have no greater calling than than to raise our children correctly and with the proper foundation so that they too, someday as an adult, can pass that on.
Well, that's a good breaking point. If you haven't recognized his voice, we are delighted to have Shelby County Mayor Mark Luttrell with us this afternoon, and we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back on the other side, let's talk about something like the budget.
That's always fun.
Now, he may run out. It may just be Karen and I left. I don't know. But we'll see. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
In 1991, my mother walked into an abortion clinic. At 15 years old, she made the hardest decision of her life. 3 years later, she became pregnant again. Her decision to continue her pregnancy saved my life. She knew that she couldn't take care of me, so she made the selfless decision to put me up for adoption. It meant that I could have a life. Little did I know that 18 years later, I'd be faced with the same decision as my birth mother. I was with my best friend when I took the pregnancy test, and I remember just feeling shocked and scared when I looked and saw that it was a positive sign. There was a life inside of me, and I didn't know if I was going to be strong enough to keep it. I was confused, I was scared, and I never thought I'd be the kind of girl who would even consider abortion. And then my friend told me about a place called Life Choices. You can go and talk to a counselor and have a free ultrasound. Honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to talk to anybody, but I was curious to see what an ultrasound would be like and see the life inside of me. I was nervous and terrified as I walked through the door, still in my Catholic school uniform. I was terrified of judgment. But instead, what I felt was the most welcome sense of relief. There was no judgment there. When the ultrasound started, I held my breath. I felt my best friend squeeze my hand, and I saw the little baby inside of me. I saw the heartbeat, and I knew that in this moment, that baby was mine. I heard the nurse say that it looked like it could be a little girl, and I started picturing my life with that baby girl. She wasn't something I needed to get rid of to have an easier life. She was exactly what God had planned for me, and Life Choices helped me realize that.
Welcome back to For Life and Liberty. Sue Parker and Karen McNeil are here this afternoon with Shelby County Mayor Mark Luttrell. He did not leave at the break. I'm so happy.
He didn't run out.
You didn't scare me off yet.
Even though I have written down in my notes that we're going to talk about on this part budget realities. Realities.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I don't even know what the budget is. I mean, I know what Life Choices budget is, and as I've said many times before, I wake up on July 1st and say, where is this money going to come from? Where am I going to get this money? But in my case, God immediately says, it's not you, Sue, it's me. So I don't know what the city and county do when they wake up the day after the fiscal year end.
We say prayers also.
So tell us about the budget. How much is the budget?
Well, the budget that we're submitting, and that will be determined by the county commission. Ultimately, the way that our budget system works is that we project revenue, and then based upon the revenue that we're going to receive, we establish our budget accordingly. And our revenue projection for our general fund is right in the range of $1.1 billion. And that's total.
For this county?
For the county.
Oh, my word.
Now,
that's so exciting, though.
Well, but let me break it down a little bit. That money, that $1.1 billion, includes any number of federal and state grants that we receive as well. The money that comes directly from our Shelby County citizens into county government is in the range of $360 million. And that's called our general fund money. So we take our general fund money, and then with the grant money that we receive and the other revenue streams, and it comes to about 1.1, a little over 1.1 and change. So then we structure our budget accordingly. Take that to county commission. The county commission reviews it, passes it, and our fiscal year begins the 1st of July. Now, the major source of that money that's raised locally is our property tax. And property tax, of course, is determined based upon the value of your property as appraised by the county assessor of property. Property is assessed every 4 years. Now, this is where the rub comes in this year. This year is the 4 years, a 4-year period where we reevaluate your property. And for the first time in at least the people in this room's lifetime, we've seen the value of our property go down.
Yes, we just looked at, my husband and I just looked at that this week.
I just got my notice last week as well.
We did too.
I was glad we weren't selling our home.
That's true. That's true. That's one reason we've seen really a reduction in people moving out of the county is because, first of all, they're having a hard time selling their house.
Yes.
Secondly, many people are taking significant losses on their property. So
A lower assessed amount equals
it's less
lower
money.
taxes.
The lower
which is
money
good
coming in.
and bad.
Well, you're right, and I'll get to that because you're fast
Money's
forwarding
not
beyond
my
me.
strong suit.
But you're right. The value of your property determines how much you pay in your taxes. We saw roughly a 3.6 reduction in overall the average value of our properties, which means we've got that much less money coming in. Now, we have to each year assess what it is that we need to meet the requirements of government. Mm-hmm. And this year, for the first time, we're going to see with our base value down and our needs remaining the same, a difference between revenue and what we need to run the government. So that is being driven in 2 or 3 ways. First of all, the property's cheaper. Mm-hmm. Secondly is the cost of education. With the merger of our schools that we were talking about earlier, with that merger, it's going to cost more money. Mm-hmm. Unlike so many mergers where you hear, let's merge to save money, in education, it doesn't work that way. Now, don't ask me to explain why. I'm not an educator. But all of the merged education systems that we have ever studied, it really costs more to merge 2 systems into one than less. So we've got an education system that costs more. We've got, in our juvenile court system, we've got some federal mandates, constitutional federal mandates that we have to meet, which are going to cost more. Mm-hmm. And then the city of Memphis has withdrawn their subsidy for education, which has to be made up in the county. So we've got a perfect storm in the sense that lower property values means we're bringing in less revenue, but the demands of education are greater, the juvenile court requirements are greater, and the city withdrawing some $68 million compounds it. So we are in a process now of trying to determine what we need to essentially run government.
Well, let me ask you something, because I've been wondering this on the federal level, and so I wanted to ask you maybe to give me a perspective from a local level. You know, when we talk about on the federal level that we have all of these demands and these projects that we need to look at and cutting out things that are not necessary, how do you do that? How do you look at each department? And you've got people's salaries to consider, you've got programs that may not be very important, but to somebody it's important. How do you determine which ones you cut and which ones you don't?
That is indeed, Karen, the dilemma, and probably the toughest part of our job is each year making those value judgments. That's what they elect us to do. So that's one of my responsibilities, is to sit down with our staff, to sit down with our county commission, and really draw some determinations as to what we need to be setting as our priorities. So it's a very complex task. I will tell you that every responsible elected official knows coming into office that is one of their primary responsibilities.
Even if people are going to be mad at them, because somebody's going to be mad.
So there's always going to be some people disappointed in those decisions that are made. But we have tried each year that I've been involved, either as the mayor or as the sheriff, we try each year to, I use the term drag it through the knothole, where you really scrutinize every expenditure every year to determine whether or not you're getting the desired result, and is there a better way to do the job. And what you end up doing when you follow that process is oftentimes you start looking for more efficient ways to operate.
Right.
And to do things more efficiently and to achieve the same result. Some of that comes from automation, state-of-the-art changes in how to do things. We've had to, from the time that I was sheriff to today, we've reduced the size of government by that, the number of employees by close to 1,000 people.
Wow.
We've reduced it, and at the same time finding ways that we can still continue to try to provide the essential services. And we've been able to do that through a variety of different ways.
I think that's what families do.
Precisely.
I mean, I know even for Charlie and I, as we've looked at, his retirement and just the things that we needed to do, expenses seem to stay the same, but revenue goes down.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that works, but we look at what we're able to do and we make some hard choices.
A couple of years ago, Bill and I decided that we were going to need to make some cuts, and we have a trash compactor. And there's just the two of us, and Bill has a business, and so we did away with our trash pickup that was out in the county was costing us $20 or $30 a month. I know that's not much, but we were looking at all kinds of ways, and we compact that trash. He puts it in the pickup, and once a week he takes it to the office and disposes of it there, and it saved us. That is how we live.
That's how normal people
And
do life.
I appreciate the way you all have really framed that, because I've told so many folks that question about the government budget. I said it's exactly like your house budget. If you'll just think about it, at your home, you know how much money you have. And sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. And then whether it goes up or goes down determines how you're going to establish your priorities. Then Karen, you go through the same process that we do. You decide, okay, I can, rather than have trash pick up, I can compact trash and just dispose of it another way. That's the same thing that we do in government. And at the end of the day, you try to determine as you're going through this annual process, okay, if I have to do this again next year, what am I going to start thinking about? What am I going to study that helps me make those decisions? So that's exactly what we do in government. It's the way we should do it in government.
We are really pleased that that's the attitude you
Very
have.
much so. My husband always says that what he loves about you is you don't go around spending money you don't have. And,
Some people, my wife calls me cheap at home.
I would never
We'll call
say
you
that.
frugal. We'll call you frugal. That's a better word.
Well, we have unbelievably come to the end of our time, and we've talked about school and we've talked about budget. There's certainly a lot of other things that we'd like to talk about, Mayor, so I'll definitely want to make a plan for you to come back, because I think this kind of conversation is what normal people want to hear. And oftentimes it's a sound bite more than just an open conversation. And we're so grateful for that, grateful for your time that you've spent with us. I can tell you that you and your wife, Pat, are wonderful friends of Life Choices, and we're so grateful for that. Grateful that you have a heart for life and that you care about the young women in this community and want better for them, and you help us to do that in many ways. So thank you.
Well, Sue and Karen, thank you all for this opportunity, and I appreciate Bott Radio so much. And anytime that I can help you all, then certainly call me back. And there's so many issues that we could cover in a program like this, so just let me know.
Wonderful.
It's all local.
Absolutely, Karen.
Thank y'all for joining us. I hope that you will be back again with us next week on For Life and Liberty.